mean, it's like really the best reason to bring boxed wine into the backcountry is because when you're done, the bladder becomes a pillow.
That's crazy. That's crazy.
What do you bring? Like, you don't bring cheese. You're not cheese.
No, I bring like processed foods. I bring processed food. I don't want anything to spoil, I guess. I don't know.
Like, so no brie. We learned that.
Absolutely not.
What about like black olives?
Where I come from, we just call them olives. Hi, welcome to The Outside Show. I'm your host, Eeland Stribling.
And I am Beck, and we are joined here today with Outside's news editor, Mr. Fred.
Woo! Good to see you too.
You too.
More wacky news to get to. Actually, very similar to the other day when we were talking
What's
about
wildlife, it seems like, lately?
Wildlife, national parks, and climbing, specifically some really cool climbs that, Mo, you're going to educate us on. First of all, let's get to wildlife, though. Bears are back in the news, this time in Japan, where some of these communities in northern Japan on the island of Hokkaido have had some real problems with bear attacks lately. There have been some fatal bear attacks. Bears have been, repopulating, and the bear population is getting bigger, and it's been encroaching into human settlements. And this story, this happened earlier this month, where a gentleman, 50-year-old gentleman, was out hiking, and he saw two brown bears, and he knew karate. And the bears were coming at him. He karate kicked one of them.
That is
and saved himself
so
somehow.
Cool.
This gentleman, Masato Fukada, kicked it in the face twice, and in the process twisted his leg. But hey, he scared away the bear, and he got away free.
And has a heck of a story to sell to a
I was like, this
studio.
is a movie. This is a movie coming out.
I know. But guys,
year.
this is not the weirdest way in which I've read about bears being scared away in Japan. Earlier, it was in like mid-2023, and over the summer, when the bear story was really picking up a lot of steam, the stories focused on some of these rural towns and how they were trying to scare away the bears. And I don't know if we have a photo here, but one of the towns created like a giant robot wolf with red eyes, and they mounted it on like a remote control drone vehicle, and they would drive it around, and it had a siren on it, and it was to scare away the bears, and it was just very glorious. And I want there to be people karate kicking bears and scaring them with big robots.
Yeah, we're in a sci-fi movie. This is turning into a sci-fi
I wonder
movie.
if they could get the gentleman to go to Australia to karate kick some of those cats that are out of control from our last episode.
I know. Well, yeah, it makes you wonder, who is winning the international battle for scaring off mammals? You know, the Australians with their cat spray, poison cat spray, or the Japanese with their
poison cat spray. My future pet name.
Oh my
gosh.
Anyway, we hope everyone's okay up there in northern Japan and Hokkaido. And we hope the bears are okay too. You know, bears.
You never want to see conflict.
They get karate kicked in the face. Okay, next story. This comes from you, Mo.
It does.
This is a story that we had talked about 6 or so months ago about this climbing team of Americans who scored an amazing climb. They completed this amazing climb on a peak called Janu, and they have been recognized at an event that you were at. So what's going on?
Yes. So this weekend I had the privilege of dressing up like a human disco ball.
Okay.
And I hosted the American Alpine Club's annual gala, in which the award for the Climb of the Year was presented to the Janu team. Matt Cornell, Jackson Marvell, Alan Rousseau. Matt also won the Young Climber of the Year award.
That's sick.
And it was just really cool to see this come full circle for these guys to get recognized, and it really cemented the place in history of this really incredible climb.
So this was done Alpine style, which means, limited safety.
Think fast and light.
Totally. You're not being guided up. You're doing it on your own. You're kind of walking up to the climb, seeing it and doing it. And this is on a peak called Janu. And, it's funny, in Himalayan mountaineering, Mount Everest gets a lot of the press, understandably. It's the highest mountain, and everyone wants to get to the top of it. But what a lot of people don't know is there are a lot of shorter mountains that are way harder to climb, way trickier.
This was still over 7,000 meters.
Totally.
So it's pretty big.
But it doesn't have the name recognition.
Correct,
but holy cow, what an impossible mountain for people to get up. So congrats to those guys.
It was very cool. And one of the team members still has a bandage on his pinky from frostbite he sustained on that trip all those months ago. But they're back to it. it. They're already back guiding, planning their next trips. Lots of whispering.
Now, was this rewarded by like a committee or like by the public?
This is a really cool thing. It's actually a public vote. So the consensus of mostly American climbers said that this was the climb of the year.
Sick. That's
Very
so
cool.
tight.
Can you trade your American Alpine Club award in for a new digit?
New people.
I just think they wanted to come join my team. Really. Yeah, they got to try a little harder, though. We require a little more than just a little pinky.
Yeah.
Okay, more national park news. The other day we were talking about Yosemite, and it's $32 million in upgrades. This next one comes to us from Grand Teton National Park, where they may have to upgrade the bike path after, unfortunately, a car was spotted driving on the bike path towards Grand Teton National
he's cruising.
Park.
Wow.
I know, and it's sort of like one of those things where you're like, is this a European person who thought that this is the actual size of the road? Because I know in Belgium, that's like a good-sized road. Or was this someone who just forgot that they were not on a bicycle, but in a Pontiac? Like, how do you end up driving on the bike path? Eeland, you look like a person who may have driven on a bike path.
Also, next to the highway, I thought it was like maybe a trail that was like, oh, this is the only road near, but you're like near other cars.
When I heard of the story, I was like, maybe it was an accident. Maybe I can give a little grace.
Yeah.
I think that's was
like next to the
behaving badly in national parks.
Or do you think this was like a dare? Someone was just like, hey man, you want to keep this Pontiac?
You gotta drive on the
I also
bike
imagined
path.
it being like a Cadillac or some kind of fancy car, or like I don't know. It just goes to show that I stereotype too much and should be open to bad behavior from anybody.
Did you think this was being driven by one of the more senior members of society
Kinda,
who maybe like read a sign
But
wrong?
that's what the kid down the road who works at Burger King drives. So.
Or back in their day, that used to be the road, and now they just got confused. They're like, no, this used to be the main road, and now this is a walkway. So.
We may never get to the bottom of why someone was driving on the bike
And I hate
path.
how much I love bad behavior in our national parks, but I'm there for it all the time.
Well, and luckily for all of us, there is the Instagram handle Tourons of Yellowstone and Tourons of Yellowstone Park, which has become like the national repository of like people behaving like dimwits at national parks, and so we can always go there.
We will add some of those highlights to our next social roundup, but until then, stay tuned. We'll be back for more, and thank you, Fred.
All right, see y'all next week.
Coming up, we are checking in with the unionizing efforts at movement climbing gyms. Welcome back to The Outside Show. Unionization efforts are nothing new in our society, but more recently, we've started to see it in the outdoor industry, from workers at REIs to ski patrollers. And I stumbled upon a movement from climbing gym employees who are making an effort to have representation at their facilities. Joining us today to talk about it is Alexa Zelensky, who is a coach, employee, and someone working towards unionization at the movement climbing gyms in New York City. Alexa, thank you so much for joining us.
Hey guys, what's up?
So super top level, why do you and your colleagues want to start a union?
Yeah, so our gym voted to unionize a couple months ago, so we are now officially unionized. We primarily did this because as the industry grows and flourishes and spreads the amazing sport of climbing to more and more people and communities, we really want to make sure that those who are working in the gyms, who are the reason why your on-the-ground experience is as great as it is, have a legal seat at the table when it comes to negotiating workplace policies that impact them.
And how has your movement gym, the movement company, how have they responded to this sort of beginning of this process?
So we are hoping that movement will come to the table in our contract negotiations willing to bargain in good faith. That is what I would like to say on that. We are hoping that they will come to the table and bargain in good faith with our union organizers.
So unions are a complex and nuanced issue, and not everyone can always agree to it. Do you have any colleagues who are just like, nah, thanks, I don't think we should unionize? And what's their reasoning?
So at our gym, staff was overwhelmingly in support of unionization efforts. Everybody can kind of see these changes that are happening in the industry as gyms become bigger and more financially stable and secure. The biggest hesitation that we saw from our staff was fear of retaliation. I think there's still a lot of stigma surrounding unionization, and there was a little bit of fear. As the campaign progressed and it became clear to us what unions are and what they have the power to do, it became kind of overwhelmingly clear that this is something that our staff really wanted. And that was apparent in our election results.
So you have your company that's unionizing, but it sounds like there's other also climbing gyms and other organizations that are also unionizing. Are you seeing a lot of like collaboration or just like a lot of support or different gyms doing the same thing?
Yeah, absolutely. So there are now 19 unionized climbing gyms across the US, which is really cool. We're all pretty in contact with each other and give one another support however we can. We're all very optimistic within the industry that worker rights and protections are going to increase as the unionization efforts prevail.
That's great. And I learned that each gym individually has to do it. So how are these efforts going gym by gym? Sorry, really quick.
Well, I can speak only to our gym efforts. So we won our election a few months ago. We are waiting to be certified by the NLRB. And then we will begin contract negotiation, where we essentially come to the table with our employer and we say, these are the changes we'd like to see in our workplace. And we try to reach an agreement.
All right. Big time moving and shaking in both the climbing industry and the outdoor industry as a whole. We will keep our tabs on this story. Alexa, maybe you can come back and let us know how it's going. And thank you so much for joining us. And
absolutely.
Stay tuned.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, anytime. Stay tuned for more from The Outside Show. Stick around to learn about some surprising research coming out of Yellowstone National Park.
Welcome back to The Outside Show. Today we're going to be talking about something that I'm very interested in. We're going to be talking about the wolf research in Yellowstone, which has been a controversial topic since it started. And today we have actually two experts, two professors with us. We have Dr. Tom Hobbs from CSU and Dr. David Cooper from the Warner College of Natural Resources. How are you guys doing today?
Great.
Terrific.
Good. So we're going to talk about, in an article that came among us and many conservationists, is that there is new research and ongoing research that's saying that the reintroduction of wolves into Yellowstone is not as ecologically beneficial as people may have thought or hoped. Can you just start sharing a little bit about that and what you've been seeing or studying over your years?
Yeah, sure. David, you want to start or let me to?
Sure. I'll just give a very brief introduction. The wolves were introduced to Yellowstone in 1995 and 1996, and there was a lot of talk about how the wolves would reduce the elk populations and all the vegetation along the rivers that had been heavily browsed by elk for many decades would recover, and all the animals would return to these riparian systems where the willows occurred. And we were asked by a colleague of ours, Francis Singer, in the year 2000, just a couple of years after wolves were introduced, to establish a study to look at what may or may not be actually occurring with this riparian vegetation along the streams. So we established, in science, experiments are really the standard by which you can really analyze effects of different things. So Tom and I established a fully factorial experiment, and Tom can go a little bit more into the treatments, but we were interested in whether just the effect of browsing reduction, if there was such a thing, would influence the plants along the stream. So Tom, you want to describe the treatments that we used and what we expected?
Yeah, sure. I think a bit of history is helpful here too. When the wolves were removed from the park at the turn of the century, early 1900s, then after their removal, the browsing was so heavy that willows were just about eliminated from the small streams. At the same time, beaver stopped building dams on the small streams because they just didn't have any food or lumber to be there. And what happened was that when the beaver were gone and the willows were gone, the streams really changed. They downcut, they incised. And that's important because willows need to be right on the stream side in order to thrive. They like to have their toes wet. And so this change in the streams made it such, these are long-lasting changes that can't be, we thought, probably can't be quickly reversed by simply restoring apex predators to the food web.
So we were hoping that we would reintroduce the wolves would control the elk population, and then everything would grow back and everything would just be happy again, right? That was the
exactly. And and that's the word on the street. You've probably seen this video, Wolves Change Rivers, that says it essentially. So we set up this experiment that had 4 treatments. It had a control, which is just the ambient condition in Yellowstone. It had plots that were fenced to prevent browsing, plots that had simulated beaver dams that we built, and plots that had both fences and dams. And so the simulated beaver dams were there to get at the idea of, well, in order to get the willow communities back, you're going to have beaver. And if you don't have beaver, it won't happen. And so after 20 years of study, what we found was the only place that willows thrived was in the part of the experiment where there were both dams and fences. The ambient condition, which is what is experienced all over the range, really didn't do very much. And so that led us to conclude that reintroducing predators doesn't represent a quick fix for the harm that is done when they were absent from the food web.
Do you think
the key thing to understand about beavers is that when they dam the stream, they impound the water, creating a pond and raising the water table in that part of the floodplain, but they also accumulate all the sediment that's moving down the stream from the watershed, and they'll build this up. But as soon as beavers are gone, which happened here when they were outcompeted by elk, the stream downcut through all that sediment and created this much drier condition with deeper water tables and a lack of water. So that is really a key turning point that Tom was mentioning.
Do you think that this study should be going on longer? Do you think the effects of reintroducing wolves, do you think we're looking at too narrow of a time window to see any adverse changes?
Yeah, that's entirely possible. That's entirely possible that in the next 100 years or so, that we could see restoration along these streams that's attributable to the presence of apex predators. But certainly in all the years since 1996, this has not occurred. So in the fullness of time, yes, there may be restorative effects we haven't seen yet.
Yeah, 1996 in ecological sense seems like just yesterday. Like, I remember that. We are not done with wolves yet. We are going to come back after a quick break.
Welcome back to The Outside Show, where today we're talking about a very interesting topic that I'm excited about. We're talking about wolf research in Yellowstone and how it is beneficial or maybe not as beneficial as we had thought. Today we have Dr. Tom Hobbs and Dr. David Cooper, professors who have been studying this for over 20 years. Can you share a little bit about how the lack of wolves or the presence of wolves affects other species besides just elk and bison?
Yeah, the stream sides in Yellowstone are dominated by tall willows. And tall willows are essential habitat for nesting migratory birds. But because the willows are so heavily browsed, there really is almost none of these migratory birds nesting on the northern range of Yellowstone. In addition, there's almost no beavers in Yellowstone, and beaver ponds are essential habitat for amphibians, and amphibians are critically endangered in most of this region. So, to get these animals back, we need the recovery of beavers so that they can start inundating floodplains and allow the regrowth of willows.
It seems like the results of this study are kind of challenging this perception that unwinding human intervention is the way to rehabilitate the natural environment.
It is, except as Tom mentioned in the first piece, there are changes that can occur when apex predators are absent and beavers are absent for multiple decades that can't easily be reversed. And that's the problem. That's the new part of this research. We're in an alternative stable state, and just reducing a little bit of the browsing is not going to reverse that state.
And I take exception with what you just said, that in general, I think it's a fine principle to say that restoring apex predators to food webs so we have complete food webs is a good thing to do. It reminds me of the wonderful quote that I'll paraphrase from Aldo Leopold, who said that the first rule of intelligent tinkering is to keep all the pieces, to keep every cog and wheel. So I think as a general principle, assuring that ecosystems have complete food webs is a good thing, and ecological science supports that.
I like that. I like that.
That's great. And you all have been doing this for 20 years. I mean, the wolves were reintroduced in 1995, 1996, and you said around 2000 is when you started. Most experiments and most research happens over a couple year span. How has this looked over the last 20 years in terms of results?
Yeah, most research is based on the length of the funding cycles, which, typically grants last 2 or 3 years, sometimes 5. And to conduct this over 20 years is really extraordinary. And it's a good thing we did, because we really were able to see over 2 whole decades the effects of our treatments on willow growth and changes in these landscapes.
Awesome. Well, over 2 decades, some things probably happened while you were out in the field working. Do you have any funny stories or anecdotes or behind the scenes of what you guys saw while you're out there over all this time?
Probably the only really funny story is working with students in the early years. We were so intense on the ground looking at what we were doing, installing wells, that all of a sudden we looked up and there was a black bear standing right next to us, and we hadn't even heard him walk up to us.
At least there's only a black bear.
Yeah,
it was a black bear, yeah, right. But in Yellowstone, you're just always surrounded by animals. It's quite extraordinary.
And I bet it's been beautiful working there and being able to go and watch the land change and be surrounded by such beautiful wildlife. It seems remarkable.
Yeah, it's been
Still
extraordinary.
friends after 20 years.
And still friends after 20 years.
That's probably the biggest takeaway, bigger than the study. You're still friends after all that time.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today. We'll be right back after this message. We'll be right back to Phil and Patty O on Mo's Big TV Experience.
Oh, yeah. Now I'm getting dizzy.
Welcome back to The Outside Show. If you caught last week's show, we talked a lot about how I got to film a TV show with a famous Hollywood actor, and our producers just thought, man, we could milk that for some more content. So joining us today to talk more about the show I did with Orlando Bloom, but compare it to the show that he did where he also learned to rock climb, is Patty O, host of Patty O Sucks At, arguably more handsome than Orlando Bloom.
Oh, that is how you butter up an interview, folks. Check it out. That's it. Can we just cut there? Interview. That was beautiful.
Katy Perry sliding in.
Eat your heart out, Katy Perry.
So Patty O, you have a show called Patty O Sucks At, where you do a bunch
Yep.
of different activities. You do a bunch of different recreation stuff, and you actually learn to do stuff like fishing and hiking and climbing and horses. And
Yes.
you went climbing, which is,
did.
I mean, the show is pretty similar to what Mo did.
Yes.
Did you have
It-
fun climbing?
it-
Let's start off with that. Did you have fun with your climbing experience?
Yes, question mark. I'm still trying to figure it out. I mean, my goal for the climbing episode was to go outside to where humans climb, squoze myself into the climbing gear and see if that even worked, and then try to have a smile on my face while doing something that just like objectively is not very fun. And I think we did it. I mean, I smiled a lot. I gained a new perspective on climbing. Let's say that.
That's great. And that's your show is like it's sarcastic, it's full of levity.
Yeah.
It's like it's supposed to like welcome people outside and like because you suck at it. You do suck at it.
Thanks, Eeland. Yeah, I mean, we are a show about like celebrating being a beginner. I've been an adult beginner ever since I moved to the mountains when I was 23. And I think a hard thing about trying new sports is like the fear of looking stupid. And I just want to like tell people like, hey, if you're afraid to look stupid, don't worry. I'll do it for you first. So that's kind of the basis of the show. And
Mo, To the Edge was you taking the one and only Orlando Bloom.
Legolas.
Yes, the man of many franchises climbing. And how was that compared?
Well, I'm kind of curious for Patty's take on this because you talked about being vulnerable and like showing that you're failing. And so Orlando had the same experience you did, right? This is his first time climbing. Do you think do you think Orlando showed the correct amount of learning, or were you just like, I bet they cut some stuff out? I feel like this is too clean.
Well, I bet
he swore a lot more than they showed.
Oh, yeah. Like I would say the main difference between To the Edge and Patio Sucks At is that Orlando Bloom is shirtless way more than I am on Patio Sucks At, for good reason. I mean, it's kind of funny that he's ripped, first of all. Orlando, you look great. But I think it's funny that he's like, oh, it's like, this is the hardest thing I've ever done. And to deal with it, I got to get me nipples out. And then he like is just like nipples out, shirtless, ripped for like the next 30 seconds. And you're like, what does this have to do with climbing? I mean, I get it. His nipples have biceps. Like the guy's absolutely shredded.
Yeah, it's almost too sad we filmed in November because like had we shot in August, like it probably would have been no shirts at all, is my guess.
All the time. He probably would have been in a Speedo on belay, which would have, I think, added a lot of chafing, but I don't know what his deal is really. I just thought it was hilarious. He's just like constantly like, I got to deal with this with me nips out. And that's cool, which is fine. Cause like, I mean, you're not going to get that with Patio Sucks At. I look like a bowl of mashed potatoes with my shirt off.
So part of the two Patio Sucks and To the Edge is that you both sort of conquered a fear, and you actually did like reach an objective. You like you made it to the top. Orlando made it to the top.
Spoiler.
And Patio and Patio, you also you made it. I don't know. We won't say top, but I think we have some of that footage.
Yeah, is this gonna be like a who did it better footage comparison?
Yeah, it's gonna be like a comparison.
Right.
So let's check out and see who had done it better.
Okay, great.
Sit.
Wow. Absurd. Ridiculous. It's so ridiculous. I get the yelling.
Equal effort, I would say.
Hey.
Equal effort.
Yep.
The actual climb starts here.
Yeah, I'm ready. Honestly, I think I look better. I'm just gonna throw that out there.
The problem with like tens of thousands of dollars worth of drones is you don't get the close-up fear factor like we do with your show.
No, one of those.
And here's the thing, though. Like, are we sure that was Orlando doing that? He knows a lot of stunt people, and also CGI's the thing.
I signed an NDA, so I can neither confirm nor deny. But we'll be back after a break for some more with Patio versus Orlando Bloom.
Welcome back to the Outside Show. We're here with our friend Patio, and we're actually talking about his show Patio Sucks At, where Patio gets to do a bunch of different outdoor activities. Now, in the last segment, we saw Patio joyously climbing a rock, bouldering, summiting. But actually, we have some footage of him actually doing it and being the everyday man that we deserve. So let's check that out.
You're so close. Come on.
Dude,
Come on, Patty. You got this.
Is that it? Am I there?
Oh my God.
Actually, I think same. You and Orlando Bloom, same.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I hope I can be as professionally handsome as Orlando. I don't know, though. I don't get paid to work out, which is frustrating, or have a private chef. But I will say this, like going into climbing, I didn't understand, like, why are people always screaming? And then I went climbing and I was like, oh, I totally get it. And that was legit. I was like, do I have to keep going? I don't know when the like finish line of climbing is. Am I there? Can I stop, please, now? I'm so tired. I was so tired. I'm still tired. My hands still hurt from that.
Did you ever have a point where you're like so nervous or scared that if it hadn't been for a TV show, you would have been like, screw this, I'm going home?
Here's the thing about me. I am very competitive. I think it just comes from like, I don't know, my Chicago Irishness and the fact that I was brought up in team sports. So I think even without the cameras, if I went out there with buddies, I would have kept going. I did think like at that midway point, during that final third day challenge, where I was on that ledge, like I was like, I can't get past this, and my forearms are just like smoked right now. Like I don't know if I physically can get past it. My desire is to be there, but yeah, I mean, I don't know whether it's like competitiveness or just like plain stupidity. I'm just gonna keep going until I get as close as to the end as possible with anything.
So you watched To the Edge with Orlando Bloom and Mo. How do you think that your
did.
show and that film sort of coincide, or how are they different? When you watched it, how did you see the similarities or differences?
Well, I do. I like how Orlando's like, I've only got a week to do this. That's my Orlando impression. And then they like flash back and he's like, I've been training for 6 months to do this. Like, what? So the big difference to me is I show up to either a sport that I am afraid of or have no desire to do, or something that I do want to do, but I've just always talked myself out of for whatever reason. And in 3 days, I try to go from zero to hero. The first 2 days are about like skills and building blocks to get to where like on the third day, I can actually kind of be set out on my own for a big challenge. So that's the big main difference. But I will say like the stuff that he climbed, and Mo, you can probably talk to this because I'm not a climber. Like it was legit. Like he climbed some serious stuff with some serious exposure.
It was legit, but it was also heartwarming. We did a day where we went out with some other adaptive climbers, and watching him get his butt kicked by a woman who can't use her legs completely was a beautiful sight to behold.
He in also, your face, Bloom. Take that, Legolas.
He did really want to train to prepare, and he actually insisted on hangboarding all summer long. And I was like, bro, you don't have to. Like nothing we're doing requires like mega finger strength. And he was just like, no, I have to get ready. So yeah, he definitely had a dedication to the sport for sure.
Yeah. And I think, I mean, no matter what, I think it's like if you watch this show, if you watch Patio Sucks At, and you want to go outside and try something new, then awesome. You know, that's a cool thing.
You also got to learn from like a 5'15" climber, whereas Orlando Bloom got to learn from me. So.
Oh, don't talk smack on yourself. Mo, I want to go climbing with you, Mo. I do. I want to go climbing again with Kai Leitner, who served as like my mentor for climbing, and is an incredibly patient human being because he had to deal with like me being, I guess, professionally moronic. Is how, like, I'm a professional jackass, so he had to deal with all of me, and he was so patient and kind. But I mean, I would go climbing with you, Mo. Let's go climbing.
Let's do it. Round two.
Yeah. I mean, I do think it would be kind of cool to like challenge Orlando to like a
climb,
like a sports
You know what? Maybe
spot.
I'll see if his people will talk to your people, and we'll get that on the calendar. In the meantime, where can we catch this episode of Patio Sucks At?
Patio Sucks At can be found on Outside TV. Wherever you find your Outside TV, go check it out. And also tell me what you want to see me do, because we're starting to film season 2. And if you want me to get out and do something goofy, I'm all for it. Professional outdoorsy goofiness. And then we can challenge Orlando Bloom to something. So we can do like a collab show. It could be called like Edging Towards Sucking, but that sounds too
that's probably not appropriate for the family audiences. But until then, stay tuned to The Outside Show, and we'll be right back. Up next, we are talking with a Velo editor about a sweet cycling race. Welcome back to the Outside Show. Joining us today to talk about the World Cup mountain bike downhill races so far is Sarah Moore, content manager for Pink Bike. Sarah, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me. Excited to talk about some gravity racing.
Gravity racing. Okay, that's a great way to start because so downhill is downhill and kind of scary, I imagine. Like, what is this like to watch or race?
Yeah, I remember the first time I grew up cross-country racing, I went and watched a downhill race and I was like, they are pedaling where they should be braking. This is absolutely insane. And so, yeah, it's really exciting. Basically, the tracks are, between 2 to 4 minutes of racing, and they're going straight down a mountain, kind of the summer version of downhill skiing, it's but through the woods. So they're dodging trees, they're going over big jumps. Their hands are really sore at the bottom from holding onto the handlebar. And so, yeah, it's a one run. You can't really make any mistakes. There's more crashes than other formats because they're really on the edge. And so it's really an exciting format to watch for sure.
Now, this sounds pretty intense, but this isn't in the Olympics. Why do you ever see that changing, or why isn't this like an Olympic sport? Because it seems pretty like invigorating to watch.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's definitely an exciting format of mountain biking. We saw the number of cross-country spots get reduced this year. So maybe there's just not enough room in the Olympic Village for more and more sports to be added. I know there's other sports that would love to be in there as well. And downhill mountain biking, it's also pretty hard to just replicate this kind of course. You need a certain amount of elevation to make the track long enough to be interesting. We couldn't have a 30-second downhill race at the Olympics. It would just not do the sport justice.
I mean, hot take, I'd rather see downhill mountain biking than breakdancing.
Oh, easily. That's not a hot take.
So coming up this weekend, maybe don't quote me on that. Don't send me your hate mail. So this weekend, coming up soon, is the World Cup in Scotland. What are we looking out for at that race?
Yeah, so this is one of the longest tracks on the World Cup circuit. It's 2.8 kilometers, which might not sound that long, but it's at least 4 minutes of racing. It's very rocky, so it's a brutal course on equipment and on riders. And so if you crash, it's not an easy place to crash. You're hitting the ground really hard. No soft bits here. And it's been a classic since I think 2002. So it's been on the World Cup circuit for a long time. Last time we saw the World Championships take place there. And so it's a really famed course. And so it's an exciting way to kick off the 2024 Downhill World Cup circuit.
At least you can dress your wounds with some scotch, I guess,
while
you're
that's
there.
True.
Yeah.
I guess that's true. And this is like a classic race, just like you said, but there's also like some legends who are like still in the sport, who are still doing it. Who are some people we should like keep an eye out for?
So Greg Minnaar is 42 years old, and he has won at Fort William 7 times. He just moved on to a new team. And so, yeah, he wants to end his career on a high. Definitely the oldest rider on the mountain, but he could still see some great things. And so, yeah, he's kind of he's an underdog now, even though he's won 7 times, but I expect to see great things.
As another elder athlete, I'll be rooting for him. I heard that Pink Bike is running a fantasy league with a $5,000 cash purse. How can I get in on this for downhill?
Yeah, so if you think you know who's going to win at the next round, you go to pinkbike.com. If you have an Outside Plus login, or you can create a Pink Bike login, it's the same thing. And you can create your roster. You have $1.5 million to choose a team, and you can win $5,000 and some bragging rights at the end of the race season.
I think we should both like try it out. We should both see if we can do it, win a couple extra money. Thank you so much for joining us today, Sarah. We'll have to check it out, and we'll look forward to it, and maybe have you back soon to talk about the results.
Yeah, and I'm putting $20 on Greg.
Getting hungry? Me too. Our next story covers the best food in national parks. Hi, welcome back to the Outside Show. Now it is national park season. People are starting to go out and visit their national parks. We talked about time reservation to making sure you get inside the park, but let's talk about something what happens when you get inside the park which is food. A lot of people think, I would never think of food of going into a national park.
Yeah, I'm like, if I get lucky, I'll find like an ice cream bar and a hot dog stand.
Yeah, which is always good, always classics. But growing up for me, when we would go into the parks, it was just like, maybe peanut butter jelly sandwiches, but also just like food we brought from home. We never really thought about going to a national park and enjoying food. Today, we're going to be talking about some actually pretty nice parks with some pretty fancy selections of food.
Pack your khakis. This is nice.
So the first place that we're going to be talking about is at Yosemite National Park. And at Yosemite National Park, it's very grand. They have a dining room with 34-foot high ceilings. And we have a picture of here. Look how beautiful that looks.
The classic Awani Lodge, I believe.
And it's
beautiful.
It's unreal. Like you have to have a dress code to go in there. You can't wear tank tops or flip-flops or anything like that. And that is their very famous boysenberry pie. Do you know what boysenberry is?
I actually don't.
It sounds delicious. I also don't know.
But I did look up this menu and dress code buffet. $60, but $60 at a buffet, I feel like I can get my money's worth.
And you have to dress up, which I think is a good it's a good rule. Like it's going to be good
If
food.
you're camping at a national park, you have to take a shower at some point. So you may as well celebrate your shower day with.
Why not make it your last meal at the
nice
park?
meal. Okay, well, I've got the next one near and dear to my heart. Acadia National Park's Jordan Pond House. And I say near and dear because I grew up there. That was always our special treat. I would actually go there with my grandparents and I would come visit. It's a very sweet place. And it's famous for the view of Jordan Pond and the Bubble Mountains. It's a really cool run and hike around there. But more famous for the popovers, which I will say this is an atrocious use of popovers. You should put jam on it or butter or nothing. Ice cream popovers, I'm not on board. Strike that from your brain. That's awful, but
what
it's
is
a really
a
cute
popover?
place. It's just like a bready muffin that has popped up and over the muffin tin when it's made.
And then you just add
It's
jam
just
or
bread,
jam.
but it's so good.
Is it?
It's one of Martha Stewart's actually favorite places to go because she also lives near the park.
That's awesome.
But it's a really cool spot you can hike into and hike out of, and it's just really pretty and reminds me of home.
It looks really, really pretty. Okay, this next place, this is located in Hot Springs National Park, and this is the Superior Bathhouse Brewery. You heard that correct. This is the Superior Bathhouse Brewery. They do have a bathhouse, and I don't think they mix the beer and they don't use the water from the bathhouse for the beer.
I mean, I don't know. I feel like some extra flavor, extra protein could be like some human soup water going into the brew vat.
Well, with some of these names, they possibly could have, like they have a drink here called Spicy Ride, which is like a jalapeno flavored drink. They have a bee's knees, and I think anything with beers is anything with bee's knees sounds great.
Yep.
They have the Spring Training, which I think is a great name, and even Space Force. So it seems like they have
going back to the human vat of brew Spring Training, a little bit sweaty, salty.
A little bit sweaty, a little Space Force, a little bit.
Sorry, I'm gonna get a letter from the proprietors of this restaurant being like, you need
we
to
can't
stop
say that.
saying human
No, it
sweat
looks like
beer.
a fun place to visit.
It does, yeah.
Having craft brew beer after a good day of hiking and being outside is perfect.
It's also in a beautiful spot. I think that's a really fun theme with all of these, is that it's in a beautiful spot. But it is brewed from the water from the hot springs. So I'm just saying, until I hear otherwise, an angry email from the owners of this restaurant.
It does sound unique.
I think it could be hot springs body water.
It does sound unique. Okay, what's the last one?
Okay, well, so the furthest thing from human hot spring beer, is in Wrangell, St. Elias. There's this cute little building that hosts a McCarthy Lodge restaurant called Salmon and Bear. And from the outside, it's very unassuming, kind of a cool classic Western hotel. But I checked out the menu on this. This is a Michelin recommended restaurant, and you can see why. It has like the pureed sweet potato schmooze everywhere and like a fresh chicken pancetta with pomegranate. Like this place is bougie. I got so hungry looking at it, looking at their menu online. The photos are incredible. And honestly, I'm a bit of a foodie. I love food. I could see planning a national parks tour based off of food.
Based off of a menu.
When I was researching this, I sent this link to my husband, and I was just like, hey, we should go to Alaska.
That sounds pretty. That's an extra reason to go to Alaska.
Exactly, as if there weren't enough, but like.
After a long day of climbing or hiking, what's like your like go-to meal? Like, what's your thing where you're like all day you're thinking about like, oh, I've been backpacking for 4 days. I want like. What's
so there's two
go-to
directions
meal?
you can go with this. There's a bougie recovery, which is usually like a high-end taco place I like.
Ooh.
Like nice street tacos. But realistically, if it's like me and my dog raging and doing a high mileage day, I go to Qdoba and I get the chips and queso.
Really?
And I do one for me, one for her. And if I give her one without cheese on it, she knows. She won't take it.
Really?
She makes me take the chip back and dip it in the cheese.
That's like your like high class coming back home snack for yourself?
Yeah, that's like because it's on the way home from like the Flatirons. So I hit that Qdoba. But no, I loved doing this because after hikes when I was a kid, like in middle school, high school, I truly would go to the Jordan Pond House because that's where the bus would pick you up to get back to your car. Just stuffed face with popovers.
Man, that's so good. That sounds great. I love a Frosty. A good Frosty after a good hike, a good chocolate Frosty.
I think I would have a hard time having a big hike, big day, and then going to the place in Alaska and having a salmon tartare.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's a shower. I think I need a rest break too.
Yeah.
To differentiate. Well, folks, where do you think the best places to eat in our national parks are? You can always let us know about this and everything else we talked about, or things you want us to talk about. Hit us up at tos@outsideinc.com. And that was another good show.
Yeah, we'll see you soon.
See ya.